Hello guys, this is Dark Fox Sage 2 and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Naruto's Debt to Ino Became Love Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. Ino threw the empty box behind her, content to know that it was the last of the some 30 boxes that implicated most of her lifestyle. Grinning, she marveled at the way her room was aligned. Done. Done. Yes. She jumped, running out of the room and past the kitchen that meshed with the living room. Placing her hands on her hip, she smiled. It was a happy feeling to know that she had now officially moved into her one-bedroom apartment. It had taken convincing from her parents as well as patience to come up with the money, but by the age of 18 Ino Yamanaka was able to move out of her parents' home. Although they were relatively close, 15 minutes away to be exact, Ino was happy to know that she was taking a stride towards that voyage of womanhood. The blonde-haired glanced out of her window, seeing the rain begin to pitter and patter against the glass. She sighed, rubbing her stomach as the growls soon followed. "I'm so hungry, but I didn't even manage to get groceries." Grimacing at her idiocy, she grabbed her umbrella and was determined to walk through the rain. Uzumaki Naruto strolled silently through the empty streets, his eyes focused towards the concrete. He mentally counted the number of cracks on the floor, apparently bored. While the rain spilled into his hair, dripping against his cheeks, he chose to ignore such and continue about in his pace. Besides, what was the point? The thought of rain never come to mind, and so an umbrella was left forgotten. A little thing like rain wouldn't ruin his day. He sighed, kicking the pebble out of vision. His attempt to win Sakura failed miserably, as always. And she made it a dark effort to have it established that she had no romantic feelings for him. Again. Sigh. He'd always ignore it, always ignore the fact that she had only friendly love towards him, in that sense he was ignorant. Yet today, in front of a crowd he had so boldly stated his love in front of, she had condemned him in her reprimand. In a way, he knew it was wrong to nourish off of Sakura's pain, as she was also in despair because of Sasuke. He and Sakura were one and the same. That was when an apple caught his sight, ending his trail of thought. He glanced northward, eyeing the trail of fruits that carried on in front of him. Grabbing at the drenched fruit, Naruto wrinkled his nose at the strange sight. What's with all these fruits?" he asked, his vision following the trace of fruits, until it had indeed stopped at a young woman. He caught sight of the blonde hair protruding from the dark jacket as he smiled. Not that Jiraiya's perversion of woman had become a characteristic to the now adult Naruto, but at the fresh age of 18 it was safe to say that his hormones have kicked in. For Ino, it wasn't an easy task to concentrate on holding 2 bags of groceries with the hook of an umbrella on her right hand. With the rain dripping harshly against the cloth of the umbrella, Ino thought she had succeeded in keeping the bags unbroken. "It just doesn't get any better than this," she remarked sarcastically, her vision darting towards the end of the road, the sight of her apartment leaving her gratified. "I'm sorry, miss," a voice whispered softly against her ear, her nerves soared as she felt her heart take a leap. With a twist of her neck she took witness of the cornflower mesh of hair that was soaked with water, the sapphire eyes that regularly blazed with happiness now dim beside the murky weather. "Oh you," they both blurted out, each scowling in defeat. "Excuse me." Ino clutched the umbrella's handle, swiftly turning to meet Uzumaki Naruto. "What do you want, Naruto?" she asked, rather obnoxiously. As if it was more of a duty to acknowledge him, Ino wished she was at her home. Uzumaki Naruto was known as an annoyance, especially by her friend Sakura. Frankly, she didn't want to associate with anyone who obsessed over her rival the way he did. "Oh, so it's that way I see," the young man rubbed his neck, raising his eyebrow. "Ah, so I guess this here is for me." Naruto exposed the now polished apple, bringing it to his lips as he bit into the crimson fruit. Ino widened her eyes in surprise, softly placing her bags on the floor as she returned her gaze to Naruto. No. Where did you get that from? This is pretty sweet. Good choice, Ino. Munching on the sugary apple, he savored the taste of the produce. By the way, there's plenty of fruit behind me, oh say around 5. That's a lot of wasted money, don't you think? Naruto. Ino growled under her breath, more for her own lack of knowledge. She stepped to see that there wasn't anything but road ahead of them. Ah, but I picked them all up. The young man patted the bulge in his jacket. You should be careful. Yeah, she rolled her eyes, pulling out her hand. Let me get them. Wow, that's pretty rude. He then added, I thought ladies are supposed to be graceful, not spiteful. Ino bit back a feud of curses, instead she faked a smile. Oi, I'm sorry for being so rude, Naruto, can I have my fruits now? Ah, I knew there was some elegance somehow. Soon following a strike from Ino, Naruto only grinned knowing it was of his consequence for that mouth of his. Alright, sheesh. The future Hokage whined, reaching over to grab at her bags of groceries. What are you doing? Being a gentle man, isn't that what I'm supposed to do? Came his innocent reply. Ino caught herself flustered under such a surprise. But that would not last long. Besides, you just look so pathetic, Ino, I have to do something. His mischievous response left her angered, but nevertheless she needed his assist. Feeling slightly generous, she adjusted her umbrella over their heads, leaning in closer to protect he as well as herself from the rain, even if it did seem meaningless. She chose to ignore his stupid remark, knowing exactly what he meant by that. Now inside the house, Naruto observed the quarters of Ino's house, finding it rather ordinary. The white tint that covered the walls gave a sense of an insane asylum to the apartment. He stepped into the living room, which was partly a kitchen. What separated each room was the counter which held the sink. Arching an eyebrow, he rubbed the back of his neck. Did you move here recently or something? Oh, how did you know? Ino asked, placed the items in her empty fridge. Well, this place looks sort of empty. Like, it's a house but it's really not a home yet. He explained, taking a flop on the couch. So whatcha going to cook for me, Making a grab at the remote, Naruto clicked the television on. Excuse me. Yeah, I mean I went out of my busy schedule to come and help you. I had lives to save, you know, I should be thanked with a meal or something. A grin poised his features. Is that so? She scoffed at him from behind, questioning if letting in the Uzumaki was a noble idea. So what do you want? Ramen. Nah, tapping his chin as if he were in full concentration, the young man shook his head. You don't want ramen. What a surprise. Ramen isn't the only thing I eat. Kicking off his boots, the teenager made an effort to snuggle against the fabric of the couch. I'm sort of in the non-ramen mood today. Naruto, I'm warning you, I'm not that great of a cook. She frowned, glancing at the vegetables she placed on the counter. Do you really think I care what you cook? I'm starving, really. I could eat anything. Taking notice of her appetite, Ino ultimately agreed to cook for the two of them. Besides, he did grant her a favor by helping her with the groceries. Would it be so wrong to return the gesture? And so, she proceeded to chop at the lettuce, wondering what exactly it was that she was going to cook. Over the years, she did help her mother with cooking, but it always related to washing the dishes. Ino took one last look of pity at the fantastic food that peered pleadingly at her. Sighing, she brushed all second thoughts aside and went ahead to chopping instead. First came the onions. She didn't realize just how gruesome onions were until she went to peeling off its violet skin. Once the odor of onions struck her nose, she felt her eyes water and this feeling of itchy distress conquer her vision. What the hell? Annoyance tanked her fuel, wishing that the knife could just chop faster. Are you having any trouble? Oh shit, she cried out, entrailing her thoughts elsewhere. She could feel the blade sink into her pinky. Swiftly dropping the sharp object, she paid no attention to its clatter as she clutched her fingers. Damn, she cried out, hoping that it wasn't as deep as she thought it was. Blood was something she could tolerate, when it wasn't coming out of her own body. Ino, are you okay? Naruto ambled his way towards her, seeing her shoulders crouch in front of him. Having her back to him, he could hear her whimpers. He frowned, curious as to what exactly happened to her. Did you cut yourself? He softly grasped her arm in his effort to pull it towards him. No, don't look at it. Her eyes widened, the scarlet liquid beginning to sluggishly smear from her palm. Open your hand, squeezing it only makes it worse. He stated calmly, taking her palms in his. But, no, I don't want to look at it. So then don't. I will. He reached for a cloth at the counter, amused at how emotional women like Ino were. Being a ninja for years, he was accustomed to the sight of blood. In his effort to pry Ino's right hand off of her left, he murmured, "Geez, what are you, a hemophiliac?" And no. Ino finally loosened her grip, stressing at the sight of a pale streak of dead skin that was spewing blood. Geez, one little cut. I didn't even think my pinky has so much blood. Well, you cut it clear to the bone, I think. He spoke over her grunts. Covering her wound with a tablecloth, he added, "It's not lethal, at least," before engaging in a chuckle. Shut up, she grumbled, tossing him an angry glare. Immune to such because of his Sasuke, Naruto chose to change the subject. Hey, what were you going to make anyway? I have no idea, she stated, feeling slightly awkward at just how close she was to him. Her gaze lingered towards his warm hands that were grasping her small wounded left one. Hey, do you have a band-aid? I can't keep holding your hand, you know. Laughing softly at his own joke, he relaxed his grip, letting her hands go as he walked towards the hall to look in the bathroom. As if things couldn't get any worse, the lights that brought luminosity into the apartment suddenly faded out. Ino quickly glanced at the light bulb held above her head. Watching it slowly die out, the action was soon followed by the piercing crash of lightning. Hey, oh wait. Ino dashed towards the shadow ahead of her, the fear indicated in her voice. Trying to hide it was becoming a problem. Soon clutching at the hem of his shirt, she tugged, pacing closer to him, her wounded hand was knotted with the tablecloth. It just couldn't get any better than this, Ino mused. Oh, don't tell me you're afraid of the dark too. He could not suppress his laugh, thinking to himself just how delicate Ino was even if she tried to hide it. You are such a child. No, she defended, reaching to clasp his arm when he entered a vastly gloomy bathroom. You're interesting, he mumbled, probing for a cabinet with his fingers, quickly shoving the handle to open the medicine cupboard. He failed in his search for band-aids. Let me guess, you just moved here so you don't have any first aid, right? What are you, degrading me? No, he sniggered, taking hold of the end of his shirt, ripping off a piece with his teeth. Pulling Ino's blood-soaked tablecloth, he tied the tattered bit of clothing onto her pinky, leaving a knot. For once, Ino was happy that the darkness concealed her blush. For the rest of the night, Naruto found himself to be the security blanket of Ino's as she refused to let him leave with the oncoming darkness. And so, he made the best of it, succeeding in finding a few candles to light around the apartment. Now inside the living room, Ino entangled herself in warm covers, facing Naruto with saucer-like eyes. And then what? And then, seriously, I'm starving, I'll even eat raw vegetables. He groaned, patting his stomach. Such words were followed by rain that banged against the windows, serving to stimulate her nerves. Common Naruto, what happened after that? I'll tell you, just let me get some food. He responded, stumbling over his shoes before reaching the refrigerator. Using a candle as radiance, he peered inside to make a grab at the leftover noodles in the plastic cup. Oh yes, food. Hurry up. What? Look, Ino, I think ghost stories aren't a very good idea when you're already terrified. He spoke firmly, gulping down at the cold noodle soup. I'm not, She trailed off as she glanced behind her back. Sorry. He exaggerated his tone, hoping that she would see the point. Hey, where is it that I'm supposed to sleep anyway? Here. She could not be bothered by his useless questions. What mattered at the moment was finding out what happened to the boy in the woods. Just tell me what happens. Whoa, alright. He sat up, crackling his knuckles for good measure. A smile graced his lips, mentally praising the supreme form of existence for allowing him to carry such luck. He found a place to crash at last. Wait. He glanced down at her wounded finger, reaching to grasp it. Are you still bleeding? Taken aback by the statement, Ino shook her head. No. She observed the way he held her hand, suddenly abhorring how well she played the weak and feeble damsel. I'm fine. Good. He kissed the cloth that covered her wound. I'm glad. For now, he guessed that the best way to swindle his way into being her roommate was to use his charm. Wake up, sleeping beauty, common Miss Yamanaka. Wake up, honey. Naruto tried to shake the body that was clinging onto him. Really, it was amazing how they both made it through the night in one small couch. He didn't want to startle her, but he really needed to go use the bathroom. She stirred. Her arm flopped over his chest as she mumbled incoherency. He grinded his teeth and wondered if it would be a moral decision to push her off the sofa. Really, his bladder was cursing him to the ends of the earth. Still, seeing Ino settle peacefully asleep beside him, it pained him to wake her. Ino. He made another effort to rouse her, softly shaking her arm. Wah, she whispered dryly. Lifting her head, Naruto could hardly perceive her blue eyes from her squinting. What time is it? I don't know. He shrugged, turning to stare out the window. From what I could tell, I think it's about 9 in the morning. 9, she shouted, suddenly alert. Pushing herself off of his torso, she staggered through the rags of loose covers that lay on the carpet floor. Damn, I have to go to the flower shop in 30 minutes. Scrambling to her feet, she quickly disappeared into the hallway. Reckless clutter noises were followed. Hey, he chuckled to himself, patiently arising from the cushions as he stretched. Good morning to you too. He joked, before rubbing his arm that was asleep. Damn. I freaking forget everything. Ino squeezed the shampoo bottle, placing the oozing liquid into her hair before beginning to rub it in. She sighed heavily, finding the warm water to be rather comforting. A knock was heard from the door, but before she could answer, Naruto decided to walk through. Hey! She cried in defense, staring through the dim shower curtains in anger. What? I can't see you, Ino. Calm down, he snickered, rummaging through the cabinets of the sink. Hey, do you have an extra toothbrush? Get out. What? Hey, don't be like that. I'm not a pervert, really. She bit the inside of her mouth, wondering what in the world prompted her to allow him to spend the night. The last drawer, she found herself mumbling before returning to rinsing the suds that lay in her flaxen locks. Once she gathered the resonance of toothbrushing, she relaxed, finding his words to be of honesty. Does your finger still hurt? Naruto mumbled through the foam of toothpaste. Ino closed her eyes, finding it somewhat uncomfortable to have someone else in the other side of her bathroom. No, I'm alright. Oh shoot, I look like a dog with rabies. He chuckled to himself, glancing at the rouge brush. Can I have this here toothbrush? Go right ahead. Hey, you're lucky I woke you up. I could have easily not woken up at all. I'm not much of a morning person, Ino admitted, beginning to rub the soap against her limbs. She then heard the rip of a zipper being pulled down before the sound of someone urinating in the toilet became clear. Couldn't you have waited? She shouted, utterly disgusted by his lack of warning. Sorry honey, but I couldn't wait. Seriously, I've been waiting for hours. He sighed with relief before fastening the zipper and going to wash his hands. Thanks for the bathroom, very much appreciated. With that final comment, she heard the door fully close while footsteps thumped back down the passageway. Of course, it was odd waking against another person, especially Naruto. In her history, it never happened before. It was true that she had a few slumber parties in her day, but always in a separate beds or sleeping bags. Even at Sakura's house, she chose to sleep on the floor with a sleeping bag. In a way, it was comfortable to sleep against someone else. Certainly it had nothing sexual to do about it, only very warm and squishy, like an extra temperate pillow so to speak. What was she thinking? She just considered Naruto to be a sleeping accessory. Snorting in her self-stupidity, she slowly twisted the knobs of the shower, pausing the running of water that spilled atop of her hair. Really? This was just a one-time thing, Ino. He's not spending the night again. She affirmed herself, wrapping a towel against her frame before leaving the foggy room. Taking a few steps through the small passageway, she could hear the hums and buzzes that brought part of the house to life. A droning of song, even the thuds of steps could be perceived. Then, she saw Naruto twist and hop through the open way, dressed in a frilly pink apron. Eyes closed, he continued to hum the chorus of a song she was not aware of. What? She asked herself, stepping a few more feet before she stopped herself. A smile spread across her face. She knew that her room was back behind her, but still, this was a sigh for sore eyes. The fact that he did not realize she was only a few feet behind made furthered her amusement. Clasping her hand over her mouth, she suppressed the giggles that desired to erupt out of her. Her free hand clutched the towel to prevent it from falling off. Still, he continued to dance and frolic about in the kitchen. His hand clasped a wooden spoon as he busted into rhyming singing. So, 1, 2, 3, take your hand and come with me because you look so fine that I really wanna make you mine. He switched hands with the spoon, twisting and jumping about before adding, I say you look so fine that I really wanna make you mine. Eyes closed, he seemed to have forgotten just exactly where he was after he began to shout even louder. Oh, 4, 5, 6, come on and get your kicks, now you don't need any money with a face like that, do ya honey? He snapped his fingers, swinging his hips before he spun around and suddenly became aware that someone was watching him. He squealed in a feminine fashion, dropping the ladle as it plummeting into the floor with a clang. Oh shit, he cried out, biting hip lip as he turned 3 shades redder. She could not contain herself as she cackled at his goofiness. Her laughs reverberated against the walls, all over the small house as she doubled over with laughter. It's not that funny. He seemed crossed, muttering with frustration. Oh man, yes it was. She smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. With that getup, it's even. Another fit of chuckles riddled through her. Okay, hardy har har. Naruto bowed his head in shame, wishing that she waited until she left the house to work before going into his daily dance routine. We had our fun, not go get dressed so I can finish cooking breakfast. She carried on in her cackling, irritating him. Rolling his eyes, he chose to push her down the hallway, forcing her to walk until they reached the front of her room. Enough. Go put some clothes on, you weirdo. Ino pulled the white top over her head, snickering at the previous scene. She believed it was cute watching a grown man like Naruto dance around like he was 5 years ago. It pertained to his character when she thought about it, his childlike character. Only, she wished she wasn't the other one to have witnessed it, more like she wished she had a camera to record the charade. Now she had something to chat about with the regular customers at her flower shop. Hey Naruto, she called out, walking back into the kitchen to find a breakfast meal placed on the table, waiting to be eaten. The sight caught her off guard, and instead of pursuing with her teasing, she stopped herself and silently sat on the chair. Good food, ain't it? Strolling into the room, Naruto set himself down across the table from Ino. His cheeks were flushed from the previous embarrassment, but he wasn't as annoyed. Yeah, I didn't think you could cook. She took a bite of the sausage and eggs on the plate. You don't know a lot of things. You know, you're right. Shut up. Hey, Common, I bet you're a better dancer than I am. She grinned, placing another spoon of food into her mouth. Her eyes glanced at the plate knowing that if she would see Naruto, all that she would be reminded of was the hilarious choreography. Yeah, watch, I'll catch you doing something funny too. I'll never let you live it down. Sure. Witnessing him munch on his food, with his messy morning hairdo and the frilly apron that hugged him, she admitted that he was handsome, in a goofy way. Ino drummed her fingers onto the hard glass surface. Really? With the common rainy days of summer in Konoha, that didn't help her flower shop at all. And according to the supposed weathermen, this was not going to cease for a few days. It's not that she did not like the rain, but fewer customers meant crawling around the flower shop doing absolutely nothing. Unfortunately, she did not have the patience for such a task. Anime and manga. A sigh escaped her as she glanced at the cloudy setting outside her window. This is so boring. Grunting, she hoped the day would roll on quicker than usual. The fact that she was alone did not assist either. Sure, a few hopeless customers came desperately searching for a lovely rose or two or a friendly flower of some sort, but that was usually at the opening hours. Now in the afternoon, what she was distracted by was the soft pitter-patters of raindrops. Then she smiled, knowing exactly what the right decision was to make at a time like this. Of course, what would be more wiser than to ditch the job for the rest of the day and take a nice bath at home? Her folks would understand, completely. She chuckled to herself as she quickly turned off the lights to the shop, spinning in her usual, "It's time to close," dancing manner as she flipped the open sign back to close. In one motion she kicked the main door behind her, before locking it shut. The pleasure of closing early was enough to sidetrack her from the showers that began to dampen her clothes. Raindrops keep falling on my head, but that doesn't mean my eyes will soon be turning red. 888,888. He scrambled around the house, trying his best to figure out just exactly what to do. Okay, explaining this to an irate Ino was not going to be easy. An uncomfortable laugh flew out of his mouth, knowing that she could come in at any moment. He then paused, in front of his accomplishment, frowning at how it seemed to look worse every time he took a glimpse at it. Well, in his opinion it was kind of a creepy statue, it always stared back at him. And at a time when he was alone for a few hours, that was not a good thing. It's not like he meant to bump into the glass statue of a woman, or whatever the hell it was, but it cracked into a million pieces as soon as it met the marble floor. Actually, the way that damn thing was placed, it was inevitable that possible anyone could innocently bump into it. So then, it wasn't his fault. The question was, so why was he hiding it? He knew that Ino would not take it lightly, and that would ruin his chances of living in the house. All that he knew, he could not stand asking people for favors, he was done being a nomad of some sort. Too bad no one in Konoha needed a roommate, that is, no one at the moment. Ino had to let him stay. The way she worked, to think about it, the woman couldn't even cook a decent meal. Common now, that was just about as good enough reason to let him stay, plus the fact that he was quite handsome if he said so himself. The way things were looking, Naruto knew he was going to be kicked out in the pouring rain. He frowned, feeling nerves whirl in his insides. He needed to hide the ugly thing quick before anyone found out. And so, he proceeded to shove it into the last drawer in the kitchen, next to the sink. With his logic, he figured that since Ino did not have any culinary skills whatsoever, she would have no need for that space. So yes, he was saved at the moment. Except, his ears twitched at the echo of jiggling keys behind him, and the only thing he was wearing was boxers. Okay, there was another reasonable explanation for this one, my friend. Could we just say it was the summer heat? Nor the rain could simmer it down. He cursed, knowing that the distance between him and his pants was quite far, so diving for it was not such a bad idea. Too bad he fell, crashed and burned. Ino threw the keys in front of her, eyes closed. She had a few routines going on when it came to the way she entered into her apartment, believing it is both a stress reliever and some sort of good luck charm for her house, sort of like a burlesque dancer but with clothes on. With another twirl equivalent to a ballet dancer, honey, I'm home, was said in a sing-song voice. She always did some one-liners after coming back to her apartment, to herself of course, forgetting that there was someone else inside. That was when her eyes caught sight of Naruto hopping between the doorframe, attempting to fix himself into pants or something of that matter. She blushed heavily, recalling that she was not alone. Feeling somewhat idiotic, she called out, Naruto, you're still here. What are you doing here? She believed that they made an unspoken agreement that he would leave by the time she got back, except that he was never informed of such. Hey, isn't it a little early for you to be here? Naruto finished zipping himself up as he walked towards her, putting on the best actor-like grin he could after an embarrassment like that. With his arms wide open, he figured silly was his trademark approach. Honey, you're home. Ino glared at him suspiciously. What are you doing? You're not planning to stay, she gasped, realization hitting her the hardest. You're planning to stay here. Are you kidding me? Before she could go on, he smothered her in a bear hug. You know, it's nice to see you. I was kind of bored. He ignored her last statement. Get off of me, she mumbled, crimson rushing under her eyes. Finally finding enough strength to push the taller blonde away from her, she brushed at the invisible dirt off her shoulders. Really, that guy was just too touchy-feely sometimes. No, who do you think you are? Biting her lips, she took a few steps away from him, noticing just how sudden his face altered from hopelessly happy to disheartened in seconds. No, he could not just barge in here, you can't. Where the hell are you going to sleep? In fact, there's only one room, one bed, and it's mine. In the midst of her screams, his knees collapsed onto the rug, as he folded his hands. Please, Ino Yamanaka. Please, por favor, s'il vous plaît, ongemasu. Where are you going to sleep? She watched him as he inched his fingers around her leg. If it were not for her being so angry, she would have laughed at him. In the couch, hello, I'm a guy, idiot, he sneered to the side, briefly out of his character before he realized his mistake. Yeah right, Ino rolled her eyes, tapping her foot. Will you get off of me? I have things to do. Like, common Ino, you don't have much of a life. This is your way to persuade. I'll cook for you, you know I'm a good cook, admit it. I'll even dance for you, her eyebrow curved, witnessing him beg at her every whim was sort of cute. And the guy said he would cook, not that she wasn't good at it. Okay, to be honest, she was planning on just eating ramen for the rest of her life. Maybe this was not such a bad idea. And you'll pay half the rent. Of course I would, he responded, nimble to arise on his feet, his happy-go-lucky grin beaming now more than ever. Once Ino caught sight, she could not help but return a smile. There was something intriguing about this goofy goober, she could not put her finger on it. Okay, good, because I was kind of getting sick of hiding all my boxes in your room, and believe me, you would have been pissed if you walked into your room. What? She hastily twisted her head, sapphire eyes squinting to spot a few brown boxes peeking out of her precious room. I can't believe this. Relax. You already said yes, no backsies. With that retort, he proceeded to run off away from the imminent assault of the Ino. Anime and manga, 888,888. A little extra something. Ino, he grumbled, snapping his tongue, slightly disgusted with the morning breath that rolled in his mouth. Because he knew full-heartedly that she never locked her door, he proceeded to turn the knob and take a few steps in. It took a few seconds for him to realize that the room was completely dark, like some sort of bat cave. What the? He mused, chuckling at how nocturnal this woman was. Hey you. Stumbling upon a few unobserved shoes in this dim room, he tried his best to find a lamp, or even a window. Wake up, Miss Ino Yamanaka, or you're going to be late. Why did he agree to be her alarm clock? He did not know why. He could have been taking a nice cold shower in the morning, or at least find Sasuke to pester him a bit, even he was a morning person. But no, he had to try and wake up a hard rock today. Her usual protests were heard. He frowned, believing that this was going to be turned into a long day. The tips of his fingers tapped at the metal edge of her bed as he moved on closer to her, at the side of her bed. Wake up, another effort in his soothing voice, but no avail. Ino, wake up, his hands softly shook at her side. He did not want her to stir awake frightened or anything. Like last time, one bruise was enough. But his patience was wearing thin. Ino, as a round of mumbles, grumbles, the creaking of her bed as she turned to the side, he decided that he had enough. You know what? He folded his sleeves, no longer taking things simple and clean. Forcefully, he reached closer to her, a knee supporting the rest of him as his arms dug under her body. She fidgeted faintly, finding a comfortable position under his arms, unbeknownst to what was about to occur next. With one quick motion, he lifted her off of her bed, pulling her close to his chest as he made a break to the dim light of the hallway calling out to him. She breathed softly, adjusting herself once more as she nuzzled her face into his chest. The sudden action caused him to fluster, not exactly expecting her to get cozy with him. He figured the best thing to do was throw her into the bathtub, right? While the pace of his heart quickened, it finally revived the sleeping beauty, her brilliant blue eyes peering at the odd figure above her. What? She half spoke, half yawned, her arms stretching above her head, fingers lacing with Naruto's smooth hair. What the? Ino suddenly became alert, pulling herself, eyes cracking open to witness Naruto's dazzling smile. What do you think you're doing? Luckily she was too much at a state of shock to notice his flustered appearance. You wouldn't wake up, he protested, squirming to keep both the balance and the girl in his arms. You're going to be late. You could have done something else, idiot. She tried her best to reach for thin air, a crack at escaping his grip. The sudden bright lights blinding her eyes, really 7 in the morning was just a godless hour to her. Hey, stop, we're both going to. Cerulean orbs widened, his leg lifted a few inches too high as the other side of him began to tip over. The best thing he could do was to head for the couch, which was ironically only a foot away. However, he fell with a hard thump. Ino wailing her arms to reach for any inanimate object to save herself did not help either. Ouch, he whined. Both he and Ino were tangled in legs, arms, bodies crashed together on the hard surface. This was not his idea of a beautiful morning. Hey, idiot. Ino made a fist, striking him above his head. It's Saturday. Arg. She waved the small portable calendar at his face, one that she managed to grab for while they were falling down like the London Bridge. I don't work on Saturday. Oh gee, you're very welcome. He managed to blurt out, see if I ever do you a favor. It was a little something called heat. Heat was just disgusting, the way it seeped into rooms, filling the room to the point of suffocation. Ino could not handle the heat, so much that she awoke from her uncomfortable slumber, at what was considered an ungodly hour of 9 in the morning. The fact that it was the middle of the weekend, the no-work days of her life, only became an irritating reminder of how settling herself perhaps was not the best idea. But no matter, she was going to prove her parents wrong, she can make it on her own. She wiped at her forehead, disgusted by the presence of sweat on her wrist. A grimace graced her lips. She sighed heavily as she banged her head against the table, atop of the pile of bills that have not been opened for quite a few days now. Hey, whatcha doing? A low voice spoke into her ear. The instant reaction was just hilarious in the eyes of Naruto. Ino jumped from her seat, pushing forth her arms as the multiple envelopes of bills flew into the air, falling down like snowflakes. Horrible, money-eating snowflakes, that is. Don't do that, she growled at him, irritated, reaching down to take a swipe at the many demands for payment that were splattered throughout the kitchen floor. Whoa, what was the meaning of that? A playful laugh ran through him. He bent down to assist Ino. Good morning, Ino. I can't believe you're awake. I can't believe it either. She sneered, rolling her eyes. It's so hot here, I can't take the heat. Lifting herself onto a chair, she carelessly dropped the papers back onto the marble table, exhaling deeply. Then get out of the kitchen. He found himself laughing, loudly and obnoxiously. The way the comeback played into his intellect, he could not restrain himself. He thought he knew better than to pester Ino when she was like this, but he could not resist. The threatening glare he received from Ino was enough to keep him quiet for a few minutes. She was aware that all the windows were opened, each and every single one of them. However, it appeared to have done nothing in comparison with the fuming heat wave that has been occurring for the past week. Sweating the moment one comes out of the shower was not as amusing as it used to be. And with Naruto's annoyingly happy-go-lucky mode of thought, she knew that they, or she, would have to get the hell out of the house sooner or later before she snapped and brought Naruto down with her. Perchance Naruto may have read the thoughts running through her mind from the blank stare she was sending him. Instead of commenting sarcastically, he held his tongue. He knew it was hot, boy was it hot. He never thought it could ever be this humid and blistering in Konoha, especially for a week. And it wasn't appealing watching Ino get riled up over small things because she could not concentrate from the heat. He wished he could do something about it, but wishing was about the best he could do. Hey here. His hands shoved into his pocket, pulling out a few unmarked bills as he grabbed her hand, opening her palm. I told you I'd pay in time, and you didn't believe me. I should have made a bet with you when I had the chance. His eyes crinkled, a smile splashing on his features. Anyway, that's $50,000, I don't owe you until next month. How the heck did you get $500 in 3 days? I have my ways. He answered slyly, his back leaning against the table. Actually, a B-rank mission usually pays plenty of cash, so I took a few with Sasuke. Unconvinced, the stress amounting from the bills quickly faded, and she too began to relax. Her fingers twisting into her fair-haired locks, swiftly tying it with a pencil, Ino heaved one last sigh. All right, I've had enough of this, Naruto muttered, turning away from her, walking deeper into the kitchen, his back to her. Ino remained at her state, placing a few dollars in each envelope, happy to know that her monthly debts were going to be paid at last. Hey, you know we actually have enough to live this month, ain't that just lovely? Ignoring the illegible chatter, she made another swipe at the sweat accumulating on her neck. Her tongue slid onto the gluey paper, sealing the envelope shut. Damn, I wish I could get air conditioners, at least one, but we can't afford it. Her mind recalled the first month of living in her new apartment as well as living with a roommate at that. It was not as bad as she expected, actually it was far more interesting than she could ever imagine. Truly, being with Naruto proved to be an invigorating experience. Wait, that was not the accurate response, it was more like living with him. Because being with him meant that she had to like him, which she did not. Well, she did like him, but, geez, this whole contradicting argument she was having with herself would been more amusing if it did not have to deal with her roommate. She bit onto her thumbnail. It was best to distract herself when it came to mindless thinking. Sploosh. Ice-cold liquid splattered onto her face, causing her to fall back. Luckily the couch was at a plunging distance, in which she flipped upon. A hard cry escaped her, echoing through the halls of the house. Her hands instinctively formed seals but stopped as soon as the rest of her body rolled from the couch. She sat up, gasping for air, as if she were drowning. The sudden contact caused the pencil to fly out, her hair soaked in water clumped to her face, drips running down her cheeks. Ino lifted herself onto the glass table, turning to send a fierce glare in Naruto's direction. It took a few huffs of warm air for her to catch her breath. Too bad her scolding could not be heard by the wild cackling by yours truly. The situation was too much for him to bear. He doubled over in laughter, his hand clutching his stomach as he tried his best not to collapse onto the floor. The walls shook alongside his hoots and hollers. His hand continued to hold onto the medium-sized bucket, but the attempt at keeping still was just over the top. He walked, no crawled, towards her. Breathing became a necessity, his face was now beet red. Once he reached her, she gave him a smug look. He clutched her arm, pulling down to his eye level. Her protests went unheard as the completely obnoxious laughs deafened her ears. She knelt down beside him, wondering how long it would take to get him to shut the fuck up. Ino, oh my god, he blurted through snorts and sniggers, your face was priceless. Did you see? I was like, he made a face, tugging at her hand to make sure she was listening, and you were like, another perplexed expression graced his features, and then I went, he motioned the bucket, and she flinched from experience, which only deepened his laughs, and then you went. Shut up. Ino yanked her arm away, pushing him away as she rose to her feet. Although he paid no attention to her, he fell on his back, onto the saturated rug. She grunted angrily, making her way back to the kitchen, scrambling through the cabinets for something enormous for the amount of chilly water she longed to fill her container with. She cursed Naruto's name, no longer caring for the way the water splashed onto the floor. Her cold clothes clung to her, although she felt relief, she did not care much for his mocking behavior. She bit her lip, leaning over to the sink, ensuring that each and every molecule of water would make it in the pail. Damn him, who the hell does he think? He can't just do that, these clothes are brand new too. Man Ino, I wish I had a camera. His laughs showed no sign of dying down, his arms reached for any object to pull himself up, she slammed the handle down, both hands taking hold of the heavy bucket. When I get you, she groaned, pulling heavy object with both arms. It swayed in front of her, large portions of water gushed out, but she paid no mind. It took a few steps to get to him, her sickening grin grew with each step. Perhaps she could not tolerate the way his sarcastic laughs, but the idea of drowning him in freezing water was stimulating. Overlooking the couch, Ino hurled the pail, watching as it drenched the poor laughing man on the floor. He coughed at the liquid that choked him, completely surprised. His eyes widened, turned to stare in utter shock at Ino. FFFH, what? His fingers fiddled through his soggy locks, large saucer-like orbs stared at her, filled with hurt. Why'd you went off and did that, Ino? His lower lip quivered, eyes glistened. Excuse me, don't you dare try with that bull again. Ino turned away from him, crossing her arms, her nose pointed to the air, HMPH. Whoa, he held a grin before pulling himself to his feet. It became a task to take a stride without falling onto the wet surface. Now, that was repressed anger, my friend. Obviously you've had a grudge against me for quite a while. He scrunched the hem of his cotton shirt, watching the water trickle. I mean a huge bucket like that for a slight dribble of water. What? She shouted, her screams echoing against the loosened walls. What the hell was the meaning of that anyway? Her foot stomped, eyes narrowing, her fingers pointed threateningly at him. He blinked, although he acted as if he was surprised, he was immediately accustomed to the way Ino was akin to sensationalize situations. Well, to be frank, she always acted this way. He thought it was slightly cute watching Ino parade about the apartment, screaming at the top of her lungs. Oh, Ino, I'm terribly sorry. No, swiftly, in a manner unlike any other, he seized her hand, his lips brushing gently against her fingers. Almost instantly, a warm flutter trailed into the pit of her abdomen, and suddenly it was a hassle to keep a grim look on her face. No, it was just disrespectful of me. Shut up, Naruto. I'm sorry, Ino. He kissed her once more, the swirls of affectionate overtaking her. Stop, she whined, yanking out her hand from his grasp. What is it with you? You're such a clown. He paused, part of him wanted to carry on with the teasing, just for the hell of it. I guess you're right. He exhaled noisily, hands occupying themselves over the back of his neck. From her view, when she did spin around to spit a good old quip, the sight of the drenched sofa did not please her. The once russet-tinted cushion appeared to be of some sort of oversized dark chocolate bar, a wet one that is. Not only that, the floor was, it could not be described, unspeakable. Water seeped into a few photographs, dripping off of the living room table. It horrified her, dealing with the thought of actually setting out to tidy up the place, again. Uck. We're cleaning this right now. Don't you? You're not getting out of here, I don't care what excuse you have. It's too late. A rag was given to Naruto, who was bemused by her outbursts. But, just do it. I wasn't going to leave, he grumbled, kneeling to begin wiping off the moisture. Thanks a lot, Miss Ino, now I have nothing to sleep on. His hand motioned onto his sleeping bed. She took one fleeting look before shrugging, passing by to head towards the kitchen. Oh, well, I guess you're sleeping on the floor then. Would you really make me do something so cruel? Unfortunately, the almost frozen water that was splattered on her was now at normal temperature. Even if it did offer to provide hydration, it no longer cooled her. Cleaning, wiping the sweat, and listening to the idiot was enough to bring any woman to mind-drifting mode. Alright, fine. Ino scrubbed at the floor, content to see the water begin to dry, along with the heat. Fine, what? He stalled, perking his eyebrow. You have a master bedroom, it's huge, why don't I just share it with you, just one night? Okay, just clean up the living room. It took him a while to register her answer in his head. He seriously thought certainly this would have her blow yet another gasket, but having her answer with a simple, okay. Well, he guessed he might as well take her up on that offer. After all, it appeared to be a once-in-a-lifetime at that. Even though he was the one who offered, and she just complied with it. Ino stared, uninterested at the moving pictures in front of her. Television was another thing on her list that she did not quite like. Well, to be honest, it was those soap operas that appealed to her the most, but weekends never offered those wonderful programs. Also, the way day blended into night, it was pleasant to have the heat simmer down, even if it was just for a bit. But that was not what occupied her mind at the moment, it was wondering where Naruto could be. It has been about an hour when she sent him, along with $10 in cash, to the store to pick up some milk and cereal. Maybe he met up with some friend, and decided to have some small chat, or he could have lost the money. That no-brain dim-wit, of course he would be bound to do something like that. Or, what if something happened to him on the way? She cringed, hoping it was nothing of that manner. But he was a shinobi, the loudest shinobi in Konoha, but a ninja at that. The sound of the door opening relieved her a bit. She turned to see Naruto, who trotted past her to place the store-bought items, before promptly taking a bound for the seat on the floor, where Ino was. Oh man, you've got to come with me. Seriously. He latched onto her arm, heaving to pull her up to her feet. She staggered, taking a few steps before catching balance. What are you talking about? It's late, I'm going to eat milk and cereal and head out to bed. Wait, I have something way better than that. Seriously, just come with me. You won't regret it. He continued to drag her out of the door, pulling it close before proceeding out onto the dark streets. Where are we going? Oh, it's a surprise. His eyes shined with excitement. He carried on. Instead of heading towards the main roads, he led her into the trails. Ino surveyed the outlines of the high trees, watching the varieties of green shrubs pass her by. The first thing that came to mind was some sort of dead animal that he probably thought would be amusing. Everyone's waiting, stop taking so long. She brightened at the comment, everybody. No, seriously, where are we going? The end of the trails seemed to be nearing, and the first hue to catch her eye was the smooth shimmering of the blue waves, against the glow of the moonlight. Second, was the gentle murmurs of laughter, teasing, and happy shouts that emerged from ahead. Is that a pond or something? I think a bay, who cares? It's so cold, he laughed to himself, his mind busy with the idea of splashing in the cool water. Wait, she shouted, shoving her heels into the dirt, watching as Naruto resumed sprinting. The link between them broke. She bit her lip as she saw him charge, stripping his shirt off before hitting the water, splashing into the group of friends that fooled around and played. Ino took a few steps forward, catching sight of all the young adults prancing in the body of water. Everyone was there, including the arrogant Sasuke. Neji even managed to get in with some persuasion from 1010. It was some sort of strange flashback occurring before her eyes. She smiled at the sight, but her enjoyment stopped short as soon as she witnessed Naruto swimming towards her. What are you doing? Go play. She beckoned him to Shu, stooping down until her backside met with the mud. Ino, what are you doing? Get in the water. He came out of the water, tugging at her palm. It's so nice. I can't. Why not? I can't swim, she whispered to him, finding it awkward being the only one not enjoying the pool of liquid. So what? He did not seem to be fazed by her response. The impulsive pulling caused her to cautiously slip into the water. Nerves rushed through her, the cool waves measured slightly above her knees. Naruto, come on, came her response. Ino peered over his shoulder, studying the lack of attention received by the others who frolicked and cavorted in the water. I don't mind being alone. Do you trust me? He suddenly cried out. The common mockery tone in his voice was no longer there. I'd never let anything happen to you. Come on, just take my hand. Offering her his hand, he lifted his doused limb, motioning for her to take it. Ino sighed, gradually placing her hand in his before he escorted her further into the marina. The level of water quickly depreciated. A clamor escaped her, out of pure shock. Eyes widened, she gaped at Naruto, who stopped swimming. You're going to give me a panic attack. Ah, honey, calm down. Stop going. Let me get used to the level at least. She shouted, her arms clenched at him, her legs could no longer feel any sort of ground. She clung onto his back, feeling the pace of her heart burst out of her like fireworks. Naruto, Naruto, Naruto. Ino, Ino, Ino. He kicked his legs to keep them both propelling. He mocked her, beaming at her with his trademark grin. Watching as the rest of his friends were all roughhousing with one another, he decided that the best thing to do for a beginner was to get away from it all. Instead of heading straight, he went to the side, by the docks. Just trust me, alright. Ino caught Sakura staring at her from afar. She blushed, uncomfortable, hoping that her friend would not mistaken what was happening for something different. She buried her face into his hair, tightening her hold on his neck, grunting in embarrassment. What's the matter? Ah, Ino, that is so cute. Sakura waved her arm, Ino cringed, and Naruto only joined in the laughter. In the midst of Ino cursing her life away, remarkably her ears were able to pick up on the last comment, Naruto teaching you how to swim, ha. One satisfying sigh came through, which assisted and loosed her tension. She rested her chin atop of his mush of messy hair, staring at the stars. Perhaps, this was not such a bad idea, cooling off from the heat was not so bad. Even if she was not so great at swimming, she enjoyed the way the water swayed under her legs. Did I kill you yet? He interjected from her random daydreaming, his arm reaching to take hold one of the wooden poles that made up of the docks. No, Ino said plainly. And without further ado, he dunked his head into the water, taking her down with him. He grabbed onto her, lifted her arm above the water before she could have any sort of alarm. Okay, let's stop here. He huffed, leaning against the post. I'm sort of tired. Naruto, it's okay. I don't mind. She reassured him, feeling slightly safe with him around. Still, the multiple stories of sharks and other types of sea life dwelling in the water was not at all appealing to her. Great. Another thing to fear. You're just real crazy, you know. Oh please, I am the life of the party. You didn't have to take me seriously. I wouldn't have gotten mad if you played with Sakura and everyone else. Her cheeks burned. Likewise, she tried her best to keep her eyes below the water, but things never quite seemed to work her way. It's not the same, Naruto spoke, eyes closed. Plus, you don't know how to swim. Now's the best time than any other to at least get into deep water. She nodded, showing that she agreed. Adjusting herself beside him, the two watched Ten try her best to catch the rest at a game of Marco Polo. You can go play. Do you really want me to leave you alone? Question so sudden, she felt something swell down below. No. She admitted, eyes that were once focused on his vivid stare now concentrated on counting the stars in the sky. What was so wrong with her? Why did she just admit that to him? He probably thought she was just plain weird now. What are you so afraid of? He asked. His breath stroked her cheek. Gently, he made a gesture that brought her face to his view. He pushed forward, kissing her cheek, wet lips pressing against her skin. She quivered under his touch. I'm not afraid. The echoes and sudden splashes of the others caught Ino's eye. No longer was the body of water occupied with a large number of people, only a few remained. Lee was finding it hard to get back out of the water without somehow tripping back in. The slick mud that awaited them all did prove to be quite slippery. Sakura giggled at him, reaching out her hand to help him, a smile gracing her. Maybe we should go back. Ino whispered to him, hiding her flushed face. Using the pole to adjust herself, she slipped her arms around his shoulders, kicking her legs as a signal for him to leave. The walk back happened to be quite silent. I had fun, Ruto. She looked ahead. Although he did have his back to her, she could read the guilt that he felt, clearly. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. She smiled, running her index finger against her cheek, remembering the sweet spot. No, you didn't. She was growing rather annoyed. Being completely soaked at the latest hour possible as well as having to walk barefoot back to her home was not that bad, but having to convince a certain idiot that she actually enjoyed herself was irritating. Ruto, I had fun. Okay. No, you didn't. Shut up. She cried out, tugging on his shirt, pulling him from behind. From there she embraced him, tightly clutching at the half-dry shirt, taking in the scent that was Naruto. Idiot. I had fun, now shut up and make me something to eat. She mumbled, tickling the small of his back with the heat of her mouth. He chuckled as the two parted in front of the house. You want to know something funny? Another one of his grins fell through. We spent all day cleaning the house and we're going to dirty it up anyway. A loud laugh flew out of his mouth, reverberating into the house like some sort of curse. Ino almost fell over, grunting as she realized that he was right. Ugh, I forgot, she cried out, completely annoyed. Before she knew it, he found the opportunity to scoop her into his arms, heading into the house. What are you doing? She bared her teeth at him, ready to sock a nice one right on his cheek. What? He asked innocently. See, only one set of footprints to clean tomorrow. Sheesh, I'm only trying to help. She sighed, guessing that he was right after all. Instead of fighting him off, she decided to just go with the flow. It was nice being carried around here and there. Although she was not in the arms of a knight in shining armor, a goofy friend is always good enough. As they passed the living room, slipping into her room, one last thought crossed her mind. Where was Naruto supposed to sleep? Something at the back of her head, she guessed it was her conscience tugged at her. It drove her back into her memories, where she recalled attempting to mop the floor, and allowing him to sleep with her. Was she completely nuts? How could she just let something like that slip by without detecting it, if anything? Was she insane? Was insanity just impaling itself into her little by little until she could take no more? Before, the couch showed no signs of drying for at least a few days. And by the way they went by it, it still was soggy as ever. In the midst of her thought, they reached her bed, as he thoughtlessly dumped her on her mattress, snickering at how she still had enough energy to yelp, because he was in fact pooped. Well, good night, he hopped onto the other side, taking hold of a pillow. Adjusting it under his head. You can't sleep in my bed like that. You're all wet. So what? Come on, Ino, it's so hot, this'll help us. Don't try to weasel your way out of this just because you're too lazy. She cried out, glaring angrily at him from the other side of the bed. But her shouts did no good, as he lay completely still on her bed, the only motioning was his chest moving slowly up and down. The pitter-patter of his heart beating at a sleeping pace. Ino frowned, finding it rather impossible that anyone could fall asleep so freaking easily. Obviously he was faking it. But she soon smiled, watching him like that, in such a childlike state in which his blonde tangles spilled onto her pillow, and the way he snored gently, she could actually admit that he looked quite attractive. She snorted, sure, cute, I guess. She told herself, bringing up a thin blanket to cover her water-drenched body. Real adorable. The first thing on his mind was how incredibly chilly the room was, how he awakened shivering. After weeks of downpours, followed by an oncoming discharge of gruesome, scorching hot conditions, he believed that the abnormal weather would finally regenerate itself. But then again, the transition from summer to fall was pending, and so it was expected of strange climate changes. For Naruto, mornings were his calling. He was quite the morning person, the warm sun embracing him, the chirps and tweets of unmistaken birds would bring some sort of melody into his day. Which is the sole reason why today came to be quite a surprise to him. Reading manga series, he pressed his body against the warmth, finding himself captivated by the comfort. A smile filled with gratitude formed on his lips, he snuggled into his pillow, feeling much too sluggish to get up. It was the eyes that were half-lidded, glossed with infinite ease, which caught sight of a strand of blonde hair that was by far much too light to be his color. He trailed downward, his sight expanding with each inch further. Arms surrounded his torso, frail body was clasped against him. She cuddled into his chest, nuzzling her face. Features filled with peaceful slumber. He felt an impulse at the touch of her foot lazily rubbing against his. He gulped, quickly recalling exactly where he was, and that was not amidst the crude bumps and hard bulges of the sofa springs. Naruto attempting to pull at his arm, which protectively held onto her waist. But as he tugged ever so softly, Ino only adjusted herself closer, making it a challenge for him to pull away. Ino, he whispered, peering down onto the calm expression that drew his nerves. She was still, save for the low rising and falling of her breaths. A splash of affection hit him, hard. Restraining himself was becoming difficult, much too complicated to say the least. At first his sudden outbursts of emotions could have been blamed on the age of untamed hormones, the ripe age of 18. But even he could repress himself after so long. Ino. He had to admit it, it would be foolish not to. At first, he paid no attention to the conscience that admitted consequences and onto the smile that jolted him so, the way she made him laugh. What he believed to be a petty crush, only a small attraction, turned into a bitter realization rather abruptly. The scent of a woman was intoxication, the touch of a woman was far more. Her aroma filled his lungs, she was so soft. And he found himself doing by whatever means necessary to catch a reaction, and when she was flustered it caught him off guard. It was a mistake to find Ino Yamanaka. He was supposed to find a house for rent on his own, he was supposed to continue pestering Sakura into dating him, and he was supposed to have teased Sasuke left and right. An agenda that was created prematurely never had much of a chance. Now that he was 18, the trip to, all expenses paid, was deemed over. The life of an orphan became the life of a young man, and the expenditure that Konoha was responsible for now became his own responsibility. But he was not resentful over the ordeal, he felt that living on his own would be easier than having Tsunade-sama worry about him all the time. Not that she has not ended her charade, but she felt slightly more confident that he was able to live on his own now that he was at legal age. Yes, the situation appeared suggestive, but he could not help himself. Was it so wrong to offer affection, and receive it all the same? He sighed, feeling guiltier by the second. He was completely aware of his manipulation of Ino, He has taken advantage of her friendly gestures. Perhaps somewhere in the haze of his lovesick self he even believed that she would in time return his feelings. Like Sakura. And Sakura, the guilt seeped at him. It made him question his loyalty to her, even if it appeared as if she held no attraction to him whatsoever. He still believed that she cared for him much more than she would admit. RRR, what time is it? Ino groaned, her hands pushing against his torso, unnerving him. His heart leapt, skipping beats as he bit his lip. Mind racing, he backtracked a few seconds, hoping that he did not speak aloud to himself, a nasty old habit that was almost impossible to kill. He flushed, his cheeks flaring at the thought of the way he held onto her. His arms opened, the tie between them ripping apart. He then rubbed at his face, hoping to have stopped the sudden flow of blood. And finally, a grin plastered his lips as he tried his best to hide behind his mask that he was close to perfecting. I don't know. His free arm searched clumsily against her desk behind him, tossing aside redundant materials, old photographs and various other objects before touching upon the hard surface of an alarm clock. Ah, here. He lifted the device, squinting to catch the red letters that blinded him. As the bat cave that was Ino's room, it was a miracle that he even saw anything in front of him. The dim shade offered little details to her room. 1:30. Wow, it's 1:30. Surprised, even to himself, he spoke, peering below at her. It's the middle of the afternoon, and I just woke up too. Yeah, she mumbled, sitting up on her bed. She witnessed the free space that her side offered, and was startled at the assertion that it was she who found her way into his arms that night. It was not like she was going to admit it though. Never. Big deal, I still think it's a little early. Blinking, she mentally questioned her sudden sour attitude towards him. In fact, it wasn't his fault that she was not much of a gentle sleeper. She grumbled at the thought of her actually reaching out to him. Ino stared at him, curious as to why he was glaring right back at her with such intensity. The humor in his tone was somewhat difficult to find, and the way he stared her down, in utter concentration, it caused her pace to sputter. What are you looking at? She finally found herself shouting, chucking a pillow in his direction. It softly thumped against his forehead, before falling back onto the bed. He remained still, his blank stare boring a hole in her direction. It was only until a few seconds later in which he immediately shook his head, chuckling nervously before turning away from her, his legs slipping out of the bed. Whoa, what was I thinking? Man, it really is late. We have got to get up. Each word an octave higher, she watched as he scrambled to get out of the room. Geez, Naruto, PFT. What were you, TT, thinking? Scrubbing angrily at his teeth, he stared directly into the mirror. Hiding himself was not as easy as it used to be. This has got to stop. He finally shouted, unable to contain himself. Quickly he covered his mouth that was crammed in toothpaste. The peppermint aroma stung at his eyesight. I have to stop talking to myself. Whispering, he bent towards the sink to spit away the gunk in his mouth. What is wrong with you? Asked Ino, bewildered. Scaring him half to death, Naruto instinctively jerked, his head knocking against the cabinet knob that stuck out above of the mirror. Instead of chuckling at his idiocy, she carried on with observing, finding his behavior much more strange than usual. Howling in pain, he stroked at the small bump that formed at the side of his head. Man, we should get going with grocery shopping, right? We haven't eaten a decent meal in days. You should go get ready. He shouted, shutting the door briskly in front of her before he continued to wash away at his mouth. Ino squinted her eyes, scratching at the back of her earlobe. Did he really do that? She questioned. What was wrong with Naruto? This morning was wacky even for him. Usually he was calm and cool, taking things in stride. Although it was kind of humorous to find him running around and whatnot, it concerned her. Maybe I shouldn't be mean to him. She took her time to step away from the door, turning to return to her room. Not that she has not taken notice, but the dry spot that irritated her throat proceeded to grow. She sneezed, feeling the roof of her mouth tickle, her nose clogging. Breathing through her mouth was now a hassle. Damn that guy. I knew sleeping in these clothes was a bad idea. She tugged at the now dry shirt, figuring that with the change of temperature she must have caught a bad cold. No, he was not trying to avoid her. He just did not think it was the best time to behave the way he regularly did, especially when being close to Ino meant trying to fight the impulse that troubled him. So he felt that walking a few steps in front of her would settle himself. But it only raised questions further for Ino. Hey, I know I have a cold or something, but I don't have rabies. She rolled her eyes, feeling alienated at the moment. Or AIDS for that matter. I have no idea what you're talking about. He turned, grinning at her before he ran into the shopping center. A frown formed on her face, she let out a sigh. Deciding that just watching him make a fool out of himself from outside was enough. She knelt by the curb, gently tugging at her cotton white arm warmers, crossing her legs. Her fingers pulled out what she could no longer wait to drink, exposing the half-empty NyQuil she has been devoting a few hours to. Bottoms up, eyes closed shut, she took a thirsty swallow for the thick, cherry-based liquid. Never quite believing in directions, hence her lack of cookbooks, she thought that a nice bottle of the cough syrup junk her parents would always give her could be an aid to her foolish cold. Her mouth squirmed, her tongue sticking out to express her distaste for medicine. That is some nasty, nasty stuff, a small smile formed, putting away the plastic bottle back into pocket of her plum-tinted skirt. When she finally did open her eyes, she was greeted by a tall figure in front of her. Choosing anatomy models. So, this is what you've resorted to. Shikamaru shoved his hands to his pockets, peering below at the girl that used to be a part of his team. I didn't know you drank alcohol, Ino. I don't, idiot, was her first response, although her smile remained. It's a cough, medicine thing. You know I don't drink. He grinned in her direction, slightly amused by her enduring behavior even after all these years. What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be in your flower shop? What is that supposed to mean? Appearing somewhat crossed, she shook her fist at him. I was just wondering if you've forgotten to be a ninja yet. In regards to others, he would have been quick to keep his mouth shut. But after years of tolerating Ino's notorious loudmouth ways, he figured the best way he could do to repay her was to irritate her all the same. Oh, the irony. Excuse me, she shouted. He suddenly found himself shuddering at the recognizable tone. I haven't forgotten. So I took a 2-year hiatus. Who's to say I won't get back into the game? Relax, Ino. It was merely a joke. He assured her. Since playing a nice game of shogi and winning, once again, to his former sensei Asuma, he guessed the rest of his day would consist of nonchalant daydreaming and cloud watching. Yeah, nodding, she was just content to stumble upon someone besides the blonde-haired wonder. 888,888,888. Where the hell is the milk? He rubbed his ear, taking a fleeting glance behind him. He was briefly surprised by the absence of his roommate, but thought nothing of it. As he continued into the aisle, feeling the cold chills waver, his sight perked at the figure only a few feet from him. She had her back to him, her short rosy locks entwined in a finger as she pondered over the prices of yogurt. He watched her lean to one side, his heart taking a few leaps against his chest. Forget the milk. I don't know, do I have enough if she paused, cutting herself off. Sakura suddenly narrowed her eyes, focusing her attention upon the various cold items in front of her. An unnerving chill danced down her spine, the hue of blood rushing to her cheeks now exposed. Naruto, isn't this getting old? She spoke casually, turning to meet face to face with the one and only hyperactive ninja. Sakura-chan. He spoke in a matter of sing-song. Grinning widely, he placed both hands behind his head. It's been a while. Yeah. Sakura could not help but return a smile, finding his statement true. It truly has been a while since he last annoyed her. She was getting to sort of miss the way he would appear out of nowhere. What brings you into these parts? His attempt to behave composed failed miserably. He wound up banging against a case of eggs, having to bend almost backwards in order to catch the carton and prevent it from making a scene. Sakura giggled, forgetting just how clumsy her friend used to be. Food, she responded. Hey, you thought that was funny? He leered, inching his way nearer. So close, he took in the scent of her laundry detergent. Say, Sakura. He grabbed onto the bottle of yogurt in her hands. When are you going to take me up on that date? She sighed. Naruto, a frown blemished upon her pale features. I already told you. Sure you did. But come on, Sakura. I can show you a good time, I swear. He crossed his fingers from behind, hoping that this may as well be the luckiest day of the week. I don't know. Tapping her finger against her bottom lip, she mused over the idea of a free diner. Besides, would it be so wrong to give him at least one chance? He wouldn't bother her for a few months after that. I guess. Yes. He jumped, pumping his fist in midair. Are you serious? Feeling his limbs jitter at the thought. His smile deepened. Yes. Her eyes trailed, wondering how much of a crowd he was going to draw in with his loud comments. How about Saturday? I'm not busy then, okay. Taking a few steps back, she waved him one last goodbye before heading out to the cashier. Once she was out of sight, Naruto made a grab for anything within arm's length, latching upon the broomstick that laid beside him. Quickly swooping it between his legs in a dancing manner, he could not control the rhythm that would exceed him. At first it was humming, because the song was engraved in his mind ever since he hopped out of the shower. His legs bucked, hips shaking side to side. Using the broomstick as another one of his microphones, he stuck it under his mouth before he shouted to the world, "Yeah, I can mash potato, I can mash potato. I can do the twist. I can do the twist." He twisted, flicking the broomstick into the air, turning around in 360-degree measure before catching it with his other hand. Well, tell me, Sakura. He pulled the broom close, running his hands through the yellow fibers. Do you like it like this? Tell me. Ooh, do you love me? He shouted, his voice echoing throughout the aisles. A few customers even stopped their routine shopping to look in the direction of the singing voice. Do you love me? Eyes that opened shortly, grew into saucers when they witnessed Ino standing only a few feet away. Whoops. Naruto grabbed a chunk full of blonde hair, hoping that the pain would subside the embarrassment he was feeling at the moment. He stammered, watching her stepping closer to him. No, go on, she smirked, motioning her hand. I'd like to hear this, it sounds interesting. No, I think we should go. He could feel the blood irking, filling his ears, his cheeks. His head now hung. He counted the squares that made up the tiles, keeping his view away from the girl that giggled at him. Naruto, common. Ino's thumb pressed against his chin, lifting them to her eyesight. Her index finger tucked under in order to balance his head. No, really, I'd like to hear what possessed you to do that. Letting out one delicious laugh, she felt him push her away. Okay, I get it. Hardy har har. He took a few steps in front of her, thrusting his palms inside his jeans. Ah, Naruto, you're such a beautiful dancer. Reading manga series. I get it, he shouted, throwing his arm in frustration. The idea to go food shopping as well as the generosity to pay for every single item was now diminished along with his self-pride. Don't get all nasty on me now, I watched you dance before after all. She suppressed a laugh, following him outside the glass doors. Rather than commenting on how much of a brilliant singer he was, she covered her mouth coughing. Feeling her eyes water, she grunted at the itch that arose on her throat. Man, I hate being sick. Serves you right, you shouldn't go and make fun of people like that. Naruto barked, approaching one of the several vending machines that were aligned in front of the supermarket. He jammed a few coins in the metal slot before pushing upon a few buttons. Eyebrows arched, Ino gaped at the teenager as he grabbed onto the bottle of cheap sake. Of course, anything could be sold in vending machines nowadays. She never thought in her day they would unnervingly sell alcohol in those devices. Naruto, don't drink sake. She attempted to pull away the drink from his mouth, but he shifted to the side faster than she could reach. She then frowned as he downed the glass container to half empty. What are you doing? Oh please, it's not that bad. Everyone always says it tastes bitter, but I beg to differ. He licked his lips, tipping the bottle in her direction. Want some? Her face flushed. She stuck her hands in front of her, and no. The previous thoughts of being such an opponent to alcoholic beverages, she knew she could not go back on her world so soon like that. Not to mention the legend behind sharing drinks. Oh common, it's good for your coughs. He continued, bobbing the bottle. No, I don't think so, you seem to want it all. Hey, no, I was slightly thirsty, he explained. Actually, you look parched. What are you, Mrs. Goody Two Shoes? She frowned, offended by his remark. Automatically, she snatched the bottle from his hands, squeezing her nostrils shut before she gulped the liquid down to the last drop. There, are you satisfied? Unfortunately, as she shoved the container in his direction, she could feel the effects of the NyQuil finding her reflexes at a slower pace. In fact, things have gotten a lot slower in the past few hours. Well, you didn't have to finish the whole thing. He shot back, throwing the bottle in the trash can, sulking. He returned his gaze to find Ino with a sad glint in her eyes. Quickly the guilt itched at him. All right, I don't mind, he admitted, pulling her at his side. His hand cupped the blue material of the Konoha metal protector that slung around her waist. No, idiot, she rolled her eyes at him. That's not what I meant. Perhaps feeding her sake on an empty stomach was a bad thing. Maybe, he should have thought a little more before trying to pressure her into drinking it. Naruto bit his lip, holding onto Ino to prevent her from falling off balance. She was quite the light drinker, in his opinion. Oddly enough, her behavior has gone unstable. It has altered from irritation to just plain silly. Any old witty sounding word would have her quickly giggling uncontrollably. Tipsy as she was able to grab onto him for dear life. Her fist seized a chunk of his cotton orange shirt, rosy lines covered her cheeks. In all honesty, she was quite an adorable, funny drunk. Wait, what did you say? Man, now that was funny. A rush of sniggers filled the atmosphere. Eyelids shut, she placed but all balance on poor Naruto. You're so funny, Naruto, you're so freaking hilarious, thank God you're handsome. She pinched his cheeks, shaking his head back and forth with her tugs. He did not know how to put his finger on this, she was so gleeful. Not to mention she could not shut up, she's been babbling ever since they've crossed the bridge in order to start heading to their neighborhood. A nervous smile appeared, he waved at the people they have passed, hoping that they were too ignorant to pay attention to the inebriated Ino in his arms, or so he thought. Ino, honey, he stated slowly as they made their way down the street, passing by a few apartments on the way. We're almost there, okay. There. Yeah, I know we're there. My house is that way. She smiled innocently, pushing herself forward as she eagerly pointed towards the lime-covered building. It took the velocity of a fox to get Naruto to latch onto her just in time. Silly. You're so silly, Ma, and I'm so tired. She commented, taking a few coughs before she continues walking. Watching over Ino has become a task fitted for a babysitter. He never knew she actually possessed such a behavior. If it was not so hard to observe her, he would have found it just adorable. All that was needed was to dress her in pigtails and she would be the best 5-year-old he's known. All right, we're here. Relieved, he watched her intently, hoping that she'd just enter the house and fall asleep. He threw the keys onto the table, aligning his arms so as to point demandingly towards the direction of the open door. Ino, get in. Hey Naruto, we should train. She caught herself from falling onto the floor. A sickly silly smile spread across her mouth. Please. I forgot to ask. You wouldn't say no, right? Naruto dragged his hand across his face, exasperating. Gee, I don't know, Ino. You're sort of sick at the moment. Ah, relax. Go beat off for a while. Her tongue clicked. She then made an obscene gesture with her hand, eyes rolling. Taking psychology courses. What? Completely catching that comment off guard, he rolled his sleeves. Fed up with her manners for today. Okay, now you asked for it. But you can't get mad at me if you end up with a cut, okay? Sure. Sure. I'll meet you outside. Smiling happily, she skipped back outside. He frowned, grasping just what he has accepted himself into. Ino wobbled her way a few strides. Let's see. She brought her hands in front of her, making a few hand seals. Now, if I remember this correctly, she smiled, happy to know that she has not forgotten most of her seals. I might win this if I do this right. Nodding, she brought her hands to her sides, awaiting the presence of Naruto. Waiting. And waiting. She watched the sky morph from a pallid into an dark indigo tint. The coolness lifted, bringing a few shivers. Idle chatter has now ended, and the oncoming greetings of bypassers has also ceased. Ino kicked at the surface, wondering how long it would take for the idiot to arrive. Sighing, she tapped her index fingers together, humming a small tune in her head. It was becoming hard to stay awake. Fighting against sleep, she was determined that proved just one thing. She was a kunoichi at heart. Out of the blue, you should stay focused on a battlefield, a husky, rough whisper roused Ino. Her vision foggy by the mist that enveloped her. Naruto pressed his lips against her ear, the echo of his breaths bringing warm shivers. He grabbed onto her torso, hoping that she'd just quit while he was ahead, while she was scratchless. You shouldn't sneak up on people like that. A voice called out. Naruto looked ahead to find Ino's daring glare. Her hands were linked together, exposing that she had finished her shadow clone technique. He grinned, feeling his grip loosen with a poof. The girl he held onto now turned into a pile of logs. Possibly, she was not so smashed as he had initially thought. Funny you should say that. He smiled, his ear perking at a sizzling sound below him. Witnessing the exploding notes prepared to commit what they were intended to, he bounded, relatively surprised by his lack of attentiveness. I guess you really are determined, hey? He brought his hand to block away the dust particles from the explosion. Shut up and fight. Her hands lifted the kunai fingers enclosing around the sharp weapon. Ino, don't hurt yourself now. He was convinced that just about any Chunin-level ninja was capable of doing such. By the way her arms staggered, she would be down for the count at any minute. And so, he decided it was just best to keep to himself until she just tired herself out. Wordlessly she dashed, bringing her kunai above her head, shouting in equivalence to a warrior. Naruto shook his head, concurring with his last notion. Arms opening, he watched as she came closer, hoping that with a simple snatch he could end this fight rather promptly. Take this. Ino smirked. He squinted in her direction. Once she was at arm's length, he reached for her kunai, only to find her disappear in yet another mist of smoke. What the? He looked behind him, witnessing nothing but the empty, desolate streets of Konoha. The resonance of crickets and owls filling his ears. Over here, above him, he looked to find Ino unexpectedly fling her kunai. He was only able to dodge a dangerous portion of the blade, wincing as the tip grazed over his shoulder. So much for avoiding any cuts and scraped. He swayed a few paces, his body colliding with the hard exterior of a tree. Gah! He slumped onto the tree, his bottom crashing onto the firm ground with a thud. Okay. Panting, he decided that it was enough for a day. He watched as Ino approached him, hopping onto him as if he were some sort of soft cushion. Oof. I won. She brought her hands to the air, cheering for herself. In case you have not realized, you are not a pillow. Oh, just say that I won. Ino closed in on his face, her breath softly touching his mouth. So close, he could detect the scent of sake and some sort of medicine. He flushed at the idea of how intimate this all appeared, bringing his arms away in order to prevent any sudden movement that he would regret later. You didn't win, I'm just tired. I won, CCCLLLLLLEAR and simple. Overstressing her words, she examined the blotch of crimson that grew on the orange cotton shirt he wore. She frowned, pulling away at the weapon, receiving another groan. Hey, did I hurt yo? I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. A genuinely concerned stare was now induced, and he found himself captivated by the sad look in her beautiful eyes. No, it doesn't hurt. My fault. She placed her fingertips onto his cheeks, pushing forward for her lips to cover his in an unexpected kiss. He widened his eyes, unable to speak as she pressed her tongue against his. It was a warm, gentle kiss. The taste of sake and cherry NyQuil filled his taste buds. It struck a nerve. A tender sprung of flutters swirled inside him, and he found himself wanting to return those feelings, those bunched up sentiments that swirled in her gesture, in her kiss. I'm sorry. She pulled away, nestling her hidden expression onto his shoulder. Naruto stared out into the open. The only source of light at this point became the moon, its colorless tint providing a glow to his atmosphere. He watched countless leaves sway as they descended from the fair blows of the wind. The house that he called his home had the door open, exposing the various junk that he called belongings. He wished he could have thought of something to say at the moment, something soothing, romantic even. But she had him speechless, and although he's unwittingly flirted with her, he never thought she would respond the way she did. He could feel the pace of his heart deepen, a sense of heat covering his abdomen. He flicked his tongue to take that last taste of sake he loved so much. Awkward as it was, he sort of felt at ease with this feeling. Bringing an arm to embrace Ino, he peered below to find that she was fast asleep. Again, no one seemed to have surprised him as much as Ino could. He smiled affectionately at the girl who snored quietly, lifting her closer to his chest. A small empty plastic bottle of NyQuil fell onto ground, rolling a few feet before Naruto stopped it with his foot. His smile grew, placing 2 and 2 together in a clever mathematical equation. I see. He arose from the ground, towards the direction at the home that awaited them both. Taking one last glance at the blonde before him, he whispered, "You win, Ino." 7. And just like that, she awoke, flinching, believing that a headache was more than prepared to take control. And just like that, there was nothing. Not a headache, not a stomachache, nor a cold. Smiling, she took a full stretch, breathing in at her fullest before quickly pulling the covers off of her. Ah, I feel better now. She yawned through her mouth, content to know that the murky feelings she had before was now over. But Ino's relaxing yawn soon turned into a wordless gasp. She found Naruto peacefully asleep beside her. Now, although this should have been quite the expected, Ino could not help slowly creeping out of bed to keep from stirring him away. She scratched at the back of her head, in her utmost struggling attempt to recall the events of the past night. The only memory that she could reminisce was taking a swing at the awful tasting sake she tried at some point. She frowned, not akin to the idea of blacking out. It was not customary for her. Ino peered below, still puzzled by the idea of unmatched sleepwear on her. And then it hit her, the idea of Naruto changing her out of her clothes was not appealing to her at all. Shooting an angry glare in his unconscious condition, before she could raise her hand to give him a nice whack on a morning like this, she paused and realized that he has only meant good intentions for what he has done, since day one. Instead of striking him, she lessened her fierce stare and felt herself loosen at the sight of a Naruto she's seen so rarely. Tranquil and composed. Yeah, I should get him a futon or something. The neon lights upon her alarm clock read 8:38 a.m. Of course, it was clearly the onset of morning. On other days, Ino would be swift to grunt and groan at the early morning hours, but this day has proven to be unlike most. She blamed it on the NyQuil and sake. Anyway, as tempted as she was to awake Naruto with a bucket full of ice, the idea of a warm shower was calling her. Even if she had not the slightest idea of what occurred after the whole medicine-consuming business, she had a hunch that it probably dealt with her lame inebriated behavior that she could not conceal. Not to mention the wave of embarrassment towards the boundless situations that could have ensued, she hoped he could forgive her for anything stupid she could have committed. Whatever it may be. As time progressed, there passed showers, a change of clothes, as well as a quick snack to mend the bizarre hunger she felt. Still, passing through her bedroom, she watched Naruto shift to the left, clutching at the pillow that she once used. Cocking an eyebrow, she thought how odd it has been for waking up so early and yet he's been doing quite the opposite. Nevertheless, she knew she had a long day ahead of her. Morning, Miss Yamanaka. Another person called out, but they were too far to be recognized. It amazed her how perky the world was at a time like this, as well as how active it was. As she passed through the streets, she found the streets of Konoha awake at her footsteps. Fish markets were arranged, fruit stands assembled. It was amusing to find the world so animated in front of her. The journey to the central part of Konoha was quite a long one. While Ino resided beside the rural area, it was fun to see how lively the city side of Konoha would be. Yet, there remained a moment of shuddering each time she thought of visiting the Hokage since it's been quite a while. As she finished walking up the extended flight of stairs, she was both shocked and surprised to see Sakura. There she stood, chatting nonchalantly with another one of Tsunade-sama's employees. Ino tried to casually pass by her, but recoiled once Sakura called out her name, appearing to have finished her conversation. She held her hand in the air, waving it softly from side to side, as her other hand cupped upon her lips, calling out her name loudly, Ino, Ino. Good morning, she giggled girlishly, smiling sweetly at her friend from afar. Ino grumbled under her breath before returning her warm glance. And she once thought this was going to be an easy morning. Hi Sakura. Feeling slightly awkward, she awaited for the pink-haired medical nin in training to respond. She then regrettably stepped closer to Sakura, sighing tiredly. What are you, tired, Ino pig? The words flowed so effortlessly, unscathed by the insult that came along with it. Sakura leaned forward, holding her report papers back as she grinned sarcastically. Not really. Surprisingly, defenses arose. Ino placed her hands upon her hips, eyes squinted in the other young woman's direction. Say something, Sakura. So what you doing? Filling out rent papers for that big forehead of yours, nay? She finished with a satisfied smirk indeed. A hue of scarlet crossed under her eyes. Sakura's palms formed fists, crumpling the papers she held. A small growl reverberated from her throat. Aha! What are you doing here, Ino? This should be the last place to be. In fact, you're not much of a kunoichi from what I heard. Oh, so where'd you get your sources, Miss Forehead? Feeling quite snubbed, she knew it was a bad idea to spot Sakura in the first place. Common Ino, you haven't been in a mission for 2 years. Ino gritted her teeth, finding the comment alone enough indication to give Sakura what she's been asking for so very long. Instead, she hesitated. Yeah, you're right, was all she could muster, an effort to keep her cool. Sakura was puzzled by the sudden agreement, but ignored it. Oh yeah, nice swimming there from the night before. You put on quite the show. That was it. You think so? She shouted an octave too high, pulling up on her sleeve, baring her teeth in Sakura's direction. Actually I do. You haven't proven yourself any better. Is that a challenge? Sakura stared down daringly at her blonde friend, completely eager for the chance to make her look foolish. She watched Ino squirm, the irritated expression from her features dying. Oh, I guess I was right. Fine, she shouted, quickly biting her lip, finding it difficult to repress her true impression of this whole situation. Just looking at Sakura from this point angered her so. Fine, then. Care to put your money where your mouth is? Sakura laughed. You couldn't afford it. No, no. Ino let out an exasperated sigh. I guess you're right. You wouldn't be able to win the bet. Oh, that's what you think. No, Sakura. Honey. Ino took the other's hand, giving her knuckles a few taps. It's okay. I know you'll probably look like a fool in front of everyone once you lose. Excuse me. Sakura cocked an eyebrow. Okay then. Her gaze turned towards the outskirts of Konoha. They were at the top stair, staring below at the rest of the city. She appeared to be in deep thought. As the wind blew a few strands of her short rosy bangs, she then turned her attention back to Ino, smiling. I have a mission next week, so how about 2 weeks? She grinned, offering her hand for a shake. Loser buys the other a top-dollar meal, okay. Without much thought, Ino grasped Sakura's hand, giving it a few solid shakes in the midst of sneering at her friend. Done, she noted before pulling away. Alrighty, Miss Yamanaka. Pleased, Sakura let out one last wave before heading down the steps in which Ino once walked in. In such a arrogant manner, Ino sauntered down the hall, towards the Hokage-sama's door, feeling her ego swell with each step. Sure, I can beat her. Hell yes. I can kick her ass at swim. She stopped dead in her tracks, lowering her gaze from the ceiling to blink to herself. Swimming. She cursed loudly to herself, her wicked words echoing down the foyer. Truth was, she had no idea of swimming. Of course, it was obvious that ninjas should at the very least know how to swim, but she always had some sort of fear when it came to the deep blue. She exhaled miserably. How the hell was she supposed to know how to swim? Especially in 2 weeks. She grimaced, taking her anger out on the wall with a loud knock of her palm. Well, as her mind started to figure out strategies, the way Shika always did. Of course. A smile formed upon her lips, her hands reaching for the knob to open the door. Tsunade-sama, she cried out, happier than usual. I've come with a proposal. Tsunade flinched, her idea of drifting to sleep before Shizune came back now laid to rest. Ino, slightly shocked by the young girl who came closer, she pressed her back onto her chair. So, what brings you here? You, Re-Jea loose. He sang, turning to his friend with a cheesy smile literally plastered on his face. He tilted closer to Sasuke, his smile soon turning into a taunting grin. Sasuke shoved him away in disgust, snapping his tongue. Ever heard of personal space? Oh please Sasuke, you can keep being an asshole, but we all know, it was delicious mocking his best friend, and even though he would never admit it. Do we all? Enough, alright. He narrowed his glare, finding it hard to eat with the grinning idiot just staring at him like that. Oh, you're so jealous. I'm going to take Sakura out on a date. I'm not interested in Sakura. He interrupted, knowing that Naruto would never believe him. Alright, fine. He spun himself around the chair, waiting for Sasuke to stick his foot onto the base like he always did. And just like he predicted, his friend did not hesitate for a second. Keep lying to yourself like that. Sasuke sighed heavily. He could never explain what possessed him into ever hanging out with the loud shinobi, but of course there were always times when he wished he never had. I'm going to have the best time tonight too. Don't jinx yourself. Sasuke rotated his chair halfway, leaning his back onto the counter of the ramen shop. He closed his eyes, taking a full gulp off his drink, kicking his legs. Actually, now that he thought about it, why does he always hang out with Naruto when he had his free time? Oh, I won't, buddy of mine. We'll see, Sasuke murmured. Privately, he wished for the whole get-together to crash and burn, in all honesty. Then he could finally be the one musing over the irony. There he is, she whispered, pushing away the leaves out of her way. So much for being quiet. No matter, she guessed by the way he gazed at the atmosphere that he probably did not take heed. A smile crept her lips, she crawled closer, flinching at the tickling sensation of leaves softly grazing against her bare skin. Perhaps, this time she could surprise him. There he rested, his legs sprawled out onto the olive blades of grass. His head tucked atop his folded arms, half-lidded dark orbs stared intently at the fluffy cloud forms in the deep blue. Creeping, she inched her way only a few feet from him. Her patience wearing thin, she could not restrain the chuckles that longed to blurt out. Inhaling deeply, she sat herself onto the grassy surface, arms rising to give a startling surprise to the teenager in front of her. Ino, are you done? Shikamaru raised his head, cocking an eyebrow in her direction. Ino huffed out the air that was once filled in her lungs. Disappointed, she settled herself at his side, grumbling as her back ruthlessly hit the ground. Couldn't you have let me know? Meh. He wavered his hand, that would be too troublesome. Figures. Ino blurted out, shifting her attention towards the clouds in the sky. What the hell are you doing here? He asked casually, his eyes never leaving the sky. I was going to ask the same thing. Ino shouted, followed by a horde of giggles that caused her poor friend to cringe, a sudden reminder of how she behaved when they were younger. Che, you haven't changed. Not yet, she could only grin. All right. Allowing a few moments to pass, Shikamaru allowed his response to linger in the air before asking, what do you want? Whatever do you mean, Shika? A fake accent indeed. Ooh, no, what am I thinking? You always come here, right? He sighed, finding this chatter to be redundant. He was never joyful when it came to interrupting his sky gazing. Okay, Mr. Sarcasm. Ino rolled her eyes, turning to face him. I need a favor, friend. Oh, I thought you wanted to visit an old friend. That too. What is it? He asked, impatiently. Hey, you know how you are a jonin and all, right? Which means you're qualified to be a teacher, Reet. And a good civilian of Konoha would never back down on an opportunity. Spit it out already. I need to learn how to swim. Ino heaved a sigh, awaiting the taunting comments. And quick. Swim. I don't know how to. Okay. Defensively, she gritted her teeth. You don't know how to swim? He repeated, somewhat dumbstruck at the news. Groaning, Ino quickly sat up. If you're not going to help me, just say so. No, that's not what I meant. Shikamaru scratched his head, his intellect at its highest attempt to recall a moment their past missions required swimming, but was shocked to find none. I've never realized it before. He shifted his gaze onto Ino. You shouldn't be so defensive. Is that a yes, Faye? He shrugged, pulling himself into a sitting position. It wasn't like he had better things to do anyway. He waited, standing in front of her door. Not that he was timing her, but he found that watching the second-hand tick was much more fascinating than what the color of the ground had to offer. His heart pounded. He prayed that the night would go as he planned, and she could finally see him for what he is. Hey Naruto, sorry for making you wait. Sakura pulled the door open, letting herself out. Jabbing the key into the socket, she twisted it absent-mindedly before turning to smile at the blonde teen. He blinked, finding himself speechless by the way she was able to make herself so attractive in so little time. He tugged the collar of his pallid shirt, feeling the hem of the top unbutton. Swallowing at the portion of saliva in his mouth, he literally could hear his gulp echoing into his eardrums. He never thought he'd be this nervous. She chuckled half-heartedly, finding his blank stare amusing. Taking a hold of his arm, she pulled herself closer. Perhaps, the autumn weather was an advantage. So, where are we going? His face flushed as he peered down at her. A small heart-shaped pin was clipped to keep her bangs away from her face. She wore a silk top that hugged her curves gently, matching the tone of her short hair. I, chuckling nervously, his trail of thought appeared to have turned into putty. Well, to eat, of course, he managed to mumble, heading off to walk away from Sakura's home, with the very girl attached to his arm. He just hoped she couldn't feel his arm trembling. How the hell is this teaching? Ino bit her lip, keeping herself from rolling her eyes. The afternoon was now over, in her dearest opinion, and night was nearing. We've done nothing but look at the damn sky all day. Irritated, she thought that he had already gotten the hint the last 20 times she's bothered him. Concentration, he huffed out, finding every other of Ino's remarks just plain unnecessary. That's beautiful, Shika, but I've been concentrating for a few hours now. The blonde angrily snatched a few blades of grass, chucking it in the raven-haired teen's face. At this rate, she believed she was not going to head for the water at all. A small part of her was actually relieved with this notion. Oh yeah, fine then, let's go. Rather uncannily, Shikamaru pushed himself up onto the ground. Grasping Ino's wrist in the process, she cried out in shock, as she was dragged towards the stream that awaited her fate. Unfortunately, she overlooked the torrent of water before she went off on her ranting. Wait, I don't know. We can't go. Not now. Her cerulean orbs enlarged, finding the sight of water rather threatening. She attempted to pry his fingers off of her wrist, but they would not budge. The heels of her sandals dug into the grass, dew and dirt scraping onto her shoes. Shikamaru continued to lead her, carelessly stepping into the water fully clothed. Ino cringed at the cool sensation of water that soaked into her shoes. Relax, you can't even drown yet. Shikamaru spoke soothingly, as he proceeded to take more steps. Okay, but stop for a second, please. Ino gripped his green vest, pulling him closer. Geez, stop, I thought you wanted to learn how to swim. Growling lowly, he turned to see her frightened expression. He did not expect her to be so scared, and instead of taunting her, decided against it. All right, you're going to have to trust me. He walked backwards, taking a hold of both her hands as the water mounted to their hips. Ino focused on the stream, recoiling with each step. When the running water reached her chest, she felt her heart leap, ears burning with fear. Slowly, she lifted her chin to meet Shikamaru's warm glance. This is going to sound rather foolish, but you're going to have to move your feet back and forth, he advised, pulling her farther from the riverside. Don't worry, I'm right here. Don't talk to me like I'm 5, Shika. She squinted her eyes in his direction. Don't act like you're 5, Ino. He found the way she gasped at any small splash of water amusing. Hey Sakura-chan. Naruto lifted his gaze away from the menu, smiling at the adorable expression that played upon Sakura's features, the way she focused on the small lettering. Oh, unbeknownst to how spaced out she was, she smiled nervously. I thought you were going to take me to a ramen shop. Anger pinched him, the sudden outburst of letting her know that he wasn't uber obsessed with ramen the way everyone else believed. He suppressed that emotion for a moment. He exhaled noisily, a grin covering his annoyance. No, I just thought it'd be nice to take you to a place much more special. Aha! Sakura slid her finger in midair. This is a really fancy place. Do you think you can afford it? Sure I can. He crinkled his eyes. You're an idiot, she giggled, placing her finger upon the small text. I want that. Naruto leaned over the table, reading the print, a salad. Are you kidding me? I went out of my way to look for this place and you're eating a salad. I'm not hungry. I already ate before we came. I'm sorry, Naruto, you should have let me know beforehand. You women are all the same. He threw his head back, letting out a sigh. Feeling slightly guilty, Sakura stretched her arm, running her hands through his fair-haired spikes. Suddenly, all the frustration and nerves that ran through him at the moment altered to the tickling sensation that splashed his abdomen. Perhaps, he could deal with this the whole day. I'm sorry, Naruto. She grinned sheepishly. Finished yelling yet, arching an eyebrow, the Jonin could not help but smirk tauntingly at Ino. How do you think I can swim that far, yet? What if I drown? She banged her fist into the water, splitting the stream as a few drops splattered onto Shikamaru's hair. You're not going to drown, again, how many times do I have to tell you? And, it's only a foot. Ino, if you don't even try, this whole thing would be pointless. Fine, fine. She pulled her hands away from his grip, fingering her soaked bangs away from her face. The cuffs of her sleeves attached to her wrists, and her violet vest stick to her like glue. You're right here, right? If I start to drown. You're not going to drown. But what if I do? Alright, I'm here. Geez. He rolled his eyes, taking a small glance at the gloomy tint of the sky. At this time, he would have been peacefully sleeping on his bed, instead of shivering in this damp river here. If people were to walk in on him, they would think he was crazy. People already thought Ino was crazy. Okay. She sunk into the water. Nothing but a few splashes was left of the girl. Shikamaru crossed his arms, awaiting for Ino to pop herself out like a whale, screaming for assistance. The thought of that caused him to smirk. Really, Ino was such a character in his eyes. A few bubbles fizzed, but still no Ino. He glared at his reflection. The way the night played tricks on him, he could not see anything but his soon concerned expression and the array of stars twinkling behind him. Ino. His voice staggered. He watched for a few more simmers to appear. The more he waited, the more his mind trailed into the multiple possibilities of what could in fact have happened to her. Ino, if you don't come out. Biting onto his lower lip, he raised his arms to take a dive. But before his limbs could touch the wetness, Ino emerged from the water, scaring him senseless. Okay, it really is deep. She grasped his arm tightly. Her toes could not longer feel the base of the water. Don't do that. She was dumbstruck. The evening winds forced her limbs to shiver uncontrollably. Catching sight of her low breaths, fog-like puffs of air, her lips quivered. Silence filled the void. The hush of the river flows hummed into her mind, the drip drops of cool water hitting the damp surface. Gradually, she raised her chin, gazing at the brown eyes that stared back at her. It's cold, isn't it? Whispering, he could feel his face blush from the sheer awkwardness. Maybe we should go. Maybe we should, he murmured, fixated on attempting to find just exactly what it was that Ino was thinking at the moment. Never, even when they were children, could he tell what exactly was on her mind. Yeah, turning away, the very feeling of blood rushing under her eyes was enough to let her know it was about time to leave. She would admit, it ended too soon. As he walked her in front of her small residence, he debated of how to exactly end their farewell. Temptation itched at him, and although he was one to take chances, he knew that it was plain old going too fast for Sakura. Perhaps it was the little bad habit of reacting alongside his thinking, but once he turned to glance at Sakura, he could see her snickering. You're a funny one, Naruto. She beamed warmly at him, placing her hands behind her. Slightly leaning over, she spoke again. Well, I had a nice time. I underestimated how fun you really are. Grinning, she scratched at the back of her neck. We should do this again. It had appeared as if she were stalling, and because he knew he could not live with himself if he had not done it, in the rather abrupt fashion he moved forward, landing a kiss on Sakura's lips. It was a small kiss, not lasting more than a few seconds. But boy, it brought a wave of nerves to quiver inside of the teenager. He pulled away, chuckling softly as he picked at his blonde hair. He expected a punch, a hard hit. When he finally did have the guts to open his eyes, he saw Sakura smiling, and it satisfied him so. He understood that she didn't quite feel the same, but damn if he could just make her fall in love with him. Thank you. She gave him a small peck on his cheek, turning to walk into her house. As she closed the door, Naruto caught sight of the blush hidden under her bangs. And it was finally clear, maybe he did have a chance after all. Or so, that is what he hoped to believe. But by the way his mind was racing, he couldn't even walk a straight line in his haze. The date did not exactly go as planned, but then again he had such unimaginable high expectations of this get-together with Sakura-chan. Perchance, he should not have made so many idiotic one-liners. He couldn't call it, but they'd always work to make someone laugh when he needed it. Sakura didn't laugh as much as he had hoped, but then again she did tolerate him much more than usual, which he found quite odd. He did not want to declare that the little rendezvous had left him with a bad taste in his mouth, and a sort of sour feeling in his gut. It was just. It wasn't Sakura. It was him. He forced himself not to perform his little gags, his charm, the way he would work his magic with Ino. He tried his best not to spoil the date, that meant not acting like Naruto. The Naruto that he was used to, at least. Honestly, he did not like the way he acted, and he was disappointed. It was just so much to impress her, he wanted to impress her. And he succeeded, just not the way he wanted to. Either way, he would have lost. Which was a realization he did not want to face. Instead, he kept mentally silent the rest of the walk home. Only commenting on how hasty the change of weather has been, getting into the days of September. He overlooked the fact that the front door was open and let himself in, hurriedly taking off his jacket, which he now hated. Throwing it to the side, he watched the material drape onto the couch. Taking a few steps forward, he heard the heels of his shoes click with the tiles on the ground. Now dismayed, he leaned against the side of the sofa, yanking the shoes off, also tossing them aside. He examined the rest of his attire, finding that indeed he was also revolted by what he was actually wearing. Yet, he was just too exhausted to begin stripping himself to the T. Heading into the hallway, he made an abrupt halt in front of Ino's door. Absent-mindedly, he opened the door, finding the room surprisingly illuminating with the lampshade's radiance. He passed Ino, raising a questioning eyebrow at how she lazily snored, clutching onto her pillow. From just her bedside there was another sort of chaise-longue type thing that settled with a few pillows and rags on it. Naruto chuckled to himself, shaking his head from side to side. Apparently she did feel bad for him, so awful she went out of her way to buy him a futon. He knew that complaining to her would get things accomplished. Disgusted with himself, he flopped onto the brown futon, bringing the cover to his face. Heaving a long sigh, he mumbled, "Ino, you can finish playing asleep now. I've already caught on. I can't trick anyone," Ino shouted, sitting herself on her bed. She placed her two hands in front of her, crawling a few inches closer to him. "So whatcha did all day?" "1. He raised his finger at her, "You left the door open. What if something happened to you?" "Oh please, we're ninjas, idiot. As if some idiot is actually going to come in this house." He gently laughed at her comment, lifting another finger. 2. Why the hell did you drink a whole bottle of NyQuil? You were asleep for days. I was. Wow. She dragged her hand across her face, completely astonished. No one told me. I just did. Don't act smart with me, Naruto, I just bought you a bed. Why'd you do that? I was comfortable sleeping on that bed. He remarked, indifferently. What are you trying to say? That futon is so comfy. Oh yeah, then you sleep in it. He got off the settee, flopping onto the mattress he was now familiarized with. What are you doing? That was expensive. Then return it. He hauled the covers, hiding his face. Tick, 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 it did not take much to set her off. And he liked it the most when it was his doing, personally. You always steal all the covers, damn it. She kicked at him, rolling her eyes at the fairly phony snores that came from under the pillows and covers. Fine. Fed up, she turned herself away from him, dropping her body onto the mattress. Stillness came afterward, for a few minutes to be exact, until Naruto interjected. Would it count, if you didn't act like yourself? He murmured, soft enough to be heard in a close range but loud enough to flow through the covers. What are you talking about? Curious, Ino twisted herself, meeting with a pile of covers. Never mind, came his reply. It fueled her anger. She jerked the blankets away, chucking them out of the bed. No, now you have to tell me. Her eyes widened at the gloomy expression plastered on his face. She's never seen him sad before, and seeing him that way hit a nerve. She softened her gaze, speaking soothingly this time, nothing counts if you're not yourself. Naruto picked at the string that hung from the pillow's verge, keeping his focus away from Ino. You're right. Common, kid. Don't be like that, it's depressing me. Don't make me get a glass of water now. She threatened, expecting a smile to change his mood. You wouldn't wet your own bed now. He chuckled, continuing to lay onto the mattress. Why not? I wet the rest of this house. You know, you're right about that. He nuzzled into the pillow, eyes closing. Thanks, Ino, you're a real sweetheart. And just like that, he fell asleep. Cautiously, Ino returned back to laying on her side. Repeating his last comment in her mind, like a record player, she noticed the way her spirit fluttered, brushing her fingers against her mouth to acknowledge the smile that formed. Whether he meant it sarcastically, or genuinely, you're a real sweetheart brought those funny feeling flutters in her stomach.